2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6,
Hello,
7
my name is Bill
o'clock, 8
Haley,
o'clock,
and this is for Haley 2024 The Movements Government Reform Ideas. Now this video is going to be on teenagers. When do teenagers start to have governmental authority or representative authority, become adults? How does this all work within the full CRA structure? So what I want to do is create a whole new constitutional amendment creating a competitive regulatory agency structure, competitive governing structure, and competitive representative structure. So if you don't know about the whole structure, please go to haley2024.org. Look at some of the other videos I have either on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever I have them, and look at the structure I have. But this video is going to be strictly on teenagers and what's going on there. So let's go through this. Parents control and have responsibility for their children. We're talking about under 13 years old now. They have full control. All parental control is going to be extremely important, and it's in the constitutional. It's a clause in the constitutional right here. So parents control and have responsibilities for their children. Parents hold 100% of the civil liberties of their children until their child is 13 years of age. So that's very well defined. Parents have it. Now, if there's major abuse, that's a negative externality. The family law sector can start coming in and dealing with child abuse, education neglect abuse, and there's other ways to deal with some of the abuses that go on. So we don't allow a child to be majorly abused and stuff like that. But as long as there's not major abuse, parents have control of their children. And they make the decisions for their children. They hold the civil liberties of their children until the child is 13 years old. Let's continue on. Teenagers. So starting on the 13th birthday until their 18th birthday, progressively at a 1.66% rate a month. That means 1.6% greater amount of authority goes to the child, to the teenager, every single month. And that gets to be roughly at their 18th birthday where they become 100% under their control. So we kind of have that now where a 17-year-old is much more likely to be emancipated than a 13-year-old. That's just the law right now. We allow a 17 or 16-year-old to have more say-so what's going on in their life than we do a 13, and especially versus a 7 or 8-year-old. So let's continue reading this. Progressively at a 1.66% a month rate. They share that control of their civil liberties with their parents. At the age of 18, a person assumes full control of their civil liberties. So highly important right there. So every family law CRA, how their family wants to be governed, can be governed a little bit differently, but we want to see be parenting within the funnel, widening out the teenagers' authority to control what they're doing, and control their life a little bit more, start having representative control, choose the CRAs they want to be in, have a little more say over their life, so it's not at age 17 and 11 months old, they have 0, and 18, they have full control. We want to not have that be a cliff where they get everything right at once. Individual membership fees and funding obligations start at the age of 13. So if you don't know anything about my full structure, we get rid of government taxes. We get rid of almost every government everything. But there's funding obligations to fund your competitive governing agency, your private business dealing with police, private business dealing with education, you're funding your private roads. There's a lot to deal with. You have to fund the prisons. You have to pay your funding obligations to your CRAs, competitive regulatory agencies, competitive governing agencies. So there's funding mechanisms to deal with it. Everything the government does, if we get rid of it, it has to be replaced either within the private sector or some can be done away with, don't get me wrong. But most of what government does will be done in the free market system. We're not going to not have roads, for example. We're not going to not have prisons, for example. We still need those things, but I change how they're being done by funding obligations but everybody gets to choose how that's going to happen. There's a lot more choice, a lot more individual liberty in this. So, what I'm trying to say is, they progressively have to start paying their taxes, their funding obligations. They're at a 1.66%. So at age 13, it's still zero, but 13 in 1 month, or at age 13, they start paying 1.66%. So let's say that the full amount is $1,000 a month, which, hey, tax right now, everybody pays about $70,000 per average household. Now, the rich pay a good portion of that, businesses pay a good portion of that, and that's going to be the same. But let's say it ends up being $1,000 a month for government, for prisons, for prison contracts, and education contracts, and all the different contracts that you have to do to pay for the services that government's currently paying for. Those obligations are still there, but it's done in a different way. A lot more liberty, a lot more stuff. Anyway, so let's say it's $1,000 to make numbers easy. This is 1.66%, so what's that? About 16 bucks for the first month. Next month, $32. Next one, 16 more. What is that? 48, 50 bucks or something like that. So we progressively do that, and they're going to be working in the charity economy. Look at the charity. We get rid of government welfare. We go to a charity system. You have to fund the charities instead of funding welfare. There's a lot to the whole system. This video is going to be strictly on the transition, how teenagers transition over. So their funding obligation starts to increase monthly. So there's no labor laws anymore. Well, there's always child labor laws to some degree within your own CRAs. So, but what I'm trying to say is teenagers starting at age 13 start taking over, taking over some of their responsibilities and seeing that government actually costs money. Society, what they're getting out there actually costs money. To build the roads, they start having to understand with real dollars coming out of their pockets that this is real stuff, that this has to be paid for. That they had to pay for their own police protection, their police contracts. And they start getting the realization at a younger age, not all at once at age 18, but progressively throughout their teenage years. So let's start this again a little bit, at least part of the way through. 1.66% a month of the full funding and obligation amount until the person must take on their full responsibilities of a citizen. And that really finishes up roughly at 18. No one may shelter their fees nor obligations by conducting transactions to a person with a lower tax or fee obligation. This graduated fee and tax obligation do not include sales taxes, business taxes, organization taxes, nor other obligations under the control of others. We don't want somebody to play games. Most of this clause right here, the bottom 2/3 are, we don't want people playing the games by doing transactions under somebody who's 13, 14 years old without fees, and lowering their fees, what I'm trying to say. A child born to an American citizen at the time of a child's birth is an American citizen and has a right to sign the CRA social contract from the age of 13 till the age of 30. Now, they still have to abide by the rules whether they sign the CRA contract. They don't have to live here anymore. It's an government ownership model of government. The citizens own this land. They get to make the rules for this land, and to stay within this land, the benefits come with obligations. It's just that simple. You don't get to have the benefits without the obligations. But you, as a citizen, by being born as an American citizen, you get to have that ability to sign. Nobody has to agree to it. Foreigners, 70% of the representatives of 70% of the people have to agree that for a foreigner born not of American citizens, they need to get the agreement from a sector, from a representative sector, representatives of 70% of the people, to come over and become citizens. Well, that's another video altogether. But a child born to an American citizen has that right as an American by being born to an American citizen. That's a benefit that American citizen has, that their children automatically become citizens. They still have to sign the social contract at one point, so they become to become an American. But they're Americans till the age of 13. They stay American till the age of 30, even though they have to abide by the social contract. Anyway, going a little bit off the topic here. I want to watch the video. We're going to do a video just on citizenship and that. Okay, teenagers will likely pay their fees in the charity economy. Now, age 13, how are people going to get $50, $100, $200 a month when they're 14 years old? Well, they're going to be working in the charity economy. They're going to have to realize the military needs to be paid for. They need to realize that police and prisons need to be paid for. They're going to be, because the fees are going up, there's going to be a heavy emphasis on, can we get more productive in roads and prisons and police and all the government functions that need to be paid for? Can we get more productive? Because people are going to want those lower fees. So we're going to bring free enterprise benefits into this by having that competition to force prices down and quality up. So anyway, for the charity economy, you need to watch that video. Look at those that on my page to see how that's going to work. The charity economy is going to be heavy on training and apprenticeships and getting people that quality knowledge and certifications and certificates and ability to do more quality productive work. So their labor hours are more worth more. Okay. Now we're going to go through the 30 sectors and see how teenagers are going to interact with them a little bit. So charities, obviously, they can work through the charities. And the charities is where the charity economy comes in. Charitable Distribution Association, that's where they have to pay their money. And if they don't pay their money, they can work through the charity economy. And they can pay for almost all their fees through the charity economy. Charity assessor organizations, they're the caseworkers. And maybe some can help work with the people who need help. Try to get them out of needing help. Family law, I mean, how many people how many teenage girls, for example, are needed to babysit for a young mother that does not have a husband at home, that needs to go out and work outside the home to make things work? And maybe that's where she's putting her hours in, her charitable hours, to make the society work. And that could be worked through the family law because it's within your family, within the group of your CRA, family law CRA, broader group. And that might include within your church, because we bring religion into it to some degree. Again, nobody ever regulates religion. That's there for organizational purposes. If you look at those videos, I'm not going to go into religion on this video. This is about teenagers. Okay, foreign policy and military. Yeah, there's going to be ROTC and some things for teenagers about dealing with whether they want to go into the military. And starting at age 13, maybe they can start training. Maybe they can do some things to get to the point where they're training in the classroom, training physically, training, doing drills, to put their hours in to pay for some of their obligations by doing it through some of these. Because I think it's, the military authorization agencies doing has to deal with basic training and the like, and getting people ready for to be in the military at the base level at least. So they're going to go down to the teenagers at the earliest 13 years old and start doing some of the training. People have to agree to it. It's all two-sided agreements. Anyway, let's keep on going. A CRA within the MAA sector are proportionally responsible for basic training. So this is what I said. Got ahead of myself. They're responsible for basic training and continuing training pertinent to the MAA, Military Authorization Agency. So this is a societal oversight that makes sure that nobody's in the military that shouldn't be in the military. They have to grant governmental power to anybody in the military, from the lowest private to the highest general. A person in charge of a tank commander or an aircraft carrier or a pilot in the plane dropping bombs or whatever. Okay. This clause includes the entire foreign protection system and narrowly focused educational missions starting at the age of 13. So that's one way you can, a child, teenager can start paying for some of their fees, is this training. You go through some of this. It can be done through your school if you have to. So all this is going to be, there's going to be so many new business / education / charity models / military law enforcement models. There's going to be so many things intertwined, and the whole CRA structure can handle that. The violent crime mitigation system. So we have law enforcement. There's a lot to that. People can start learning how to be fireman assistants, police assistants, learning how to be a neighborhood guard, neighborhood watch. Those are really important to the police, especially if we go to a competitive policing, to get trained how to be a better guard, a mall cop, a neighborhood watch, just be an assistant to the police. There's a lot of times where police can get overwhelmed, and if they have people who have some training and certain certificates where it's well known what they can do, they can come in with a badge showing what level of authority they have, and be a huge benefit to the system. And then the courts and the prisons and we'll get into that later, when that doesn't relate to teenagers but so much, but it can. There's a lot of things that many areas, the judicial system, for example, public defenders, how many teenagers that really older teenagers I'm talking about maybe could do some of their training by being assistant and helping do research for a public defender. So there's a lot to that, is what I'm trying to get at. The CRAs within the LEA sector, that's the law enforcement authorization sector, are responsible for law enforcement academies. So they're doing basic training or fireman training and police academies and the like. EMTs. So if you go through major training to be an EMT, that could be, you can get paid to do that in the charity economy, and you get those certificates, and now your labor in the charity economy is worth a lot more. If you have EMT qualifications, you're more valuable than someone who does not. So at the start of age 13, this is a major educational method where it really motivates people to be beneficial and worth a lot to society. Let's keep on going. Food, okay, that's not going to be relative to too much, but hey, there's a lot involved in food charity. So that's just a little aside there. Education, obviously, a teenager can do a ton in education. They can teach a couple grade levels down, tutor a couple grade levels down, and really pay for their education, because, hey, it's private sector education, guys, or within their public school CRA or whatever education competitive governing agency you want to go with. It could be paid for by you being part of the teaching. You just teach a few levels down, a few grade levels down. You tutor people, do some classes. And there's no better education for somebody than actually to teach somebody a little bit younger what you've already known. That way you really understand it a lot better. Manufacturing, human resources and sales, identity. Not sure how much that's going to come into play. Some of it can. So every sector will have a way to have some charity economy built into it, some labor hours built into it. Okay, for every year, okay, this is for education. A very important clause here. And this is for people who were teenagers who went through the public school system. And let me just read it because we go away from the public school system, but because people already got educated, the way education and taxes work is that you get educated up front and you pay taxes the rest of your life to repay what they did for you for those 12 or 13 years, K through 12, and even college. So you pay taxes really $9,000 a year for life. I mean, $1 trillion a year is what government spends, local, state, and federal, all together. Out of 110 million households, that's about $9,000, maybe $10,000 per household per year. That's on average now, but that's a lot of money. And that's paying back what they did for you already. But we have a huge debt, Social Security debt, a lot of debt. Part of repaying that debt is going to be for to charge people who already went through public school, have that tax stay there for a while to pay back our government debt. Because a big part of government debt is paying back the taxes for paying back what the government did for you in educating you, K through 12. So if you did not go through public school, you don't have to pay this tax because they did not fund your education. And if they partly did, then it did. So if you want to read that, you can, but it's going to get a little bit complicated. I'll explain this a little bit more on my debt page and my education page. But we're talking about teenagers now, and this is not as relevant as I thought it was going to be. It has teenagers in it, but it's more used to be teenagers who were already going through K through 12. Let's keep on going. And this is another one, the same thing with education. This slide I'll go over on the education and on the debt page. If you want to pause and read it, you can, or you go to my webpage, read over it. I'll explain it on the other sites. Parents have the right to control their child's education subject to a parent's family law, CRA. So we already have the clause saying parents have control over their children. But I also wanted to have another clause saying parents have the right to control their children's education. Now, I know in constitutional circles, if you start listing some of the rights a parent has, they almost assume that the other rights are not there. So I might want to take this out just so the other one is all-inclusive. And they don't think, okay, he started listing rights in another one, that means that clause is not there. They don't even think the Ninth Amendment even exists because we started listing our rights. The constitutional founding fathers, they argued against including the Bill of Rights because they said, hey, if we start listing our rights, then they're going to assume that other rights are not there, and they're going to start infringing the other rights because we do not include it. It was all inclusive by not giving the government authority in the first place in those areas. So I do have to think about this one and have discussions with people on whether or not to put this in there. But because education is so incredibly important, I decided to put it in here. And I don't know, maybe I need to write more language in there so constitutional scholars in the Supreme Court can make sure they understand, not with Ninth Amendment language, our current Ninth Amendment language, but even stronger language. Really drill home, no, I really mean it. I mean, if we want to change our Constitution dramatically, we could pass the 10th Amendment again and put at the end, and we really mean the 10th Amendment. And we really mean the Ninth Amendment. But it's there in the Constitution, but we just don't abide by it. But by no means do we abide by it. We don't abide by the First Amendment even coming close, because the current education system, public school system, is not even close to being constitutional. Not just on the federal level, but it bans the state from doing what it's doing, the localities to do what they're doing. I have a full video on that, how the public school system is unconstitutional, and it's not even close. Environmental, obviously there's going to be a lot of jobs in the environment that teenagers are going to want to get out there and help clean up lakes and do different things. Obviously, that's a little bit of a side issue, but what I'm saying is there's so many areas in our life where these teenagers can go out there and do projects and be within the charity economy and pay for some of the things through the charity economy. Um, Transportation is a road system, private sector. It's going to be hard to get the teenagers out there, but hey, there's jobs out there that might be able to be done within the charity economy dealing with that. Land and water, obviously, there might be some opportunities there as well. Going back to this structure, so the teenagers are going to start having authority to be able to pick their they're going to have 1.66% more every month until they hit 18. More control and representative. So their first vote is at age 13. People start voting at age 13. They select their CRA. They'll probably select their parent CRA, and only their CRA gets to govern them. They don't get to control what somebody else does in another CRA. So a 13-year-old is not going to be able to take away somebody else's authority over here. So we don't have to worry about a 13-year-old not being smart enough or intelligent enough or wanting to be more socialist. They can pick the CRA they want to go with, and they're not affecting others. But they start paying their fees, and they start having more representation every single month. And that's just going to be a good way for them to gradually build up their responsibility level. Every teenager should be dramatically building up month by month their responsibility level so they can take on their responsibilities as an 18-year-old. We shouldn't treat them as as small children until they hit their 18th birthday, then release them to the world in a one step. Hey, you're out of high school, now go take on the world, and they get clobbered. Stair step them out of it. Anyway, so let's finish this up. You see all 30 sectors there again if you want to look at it. Here's 15 of them. Here's the other 15. Okay, this one is just supposed to be on the teenagers. This probably took me a little bit longer than I needed to, but I wanted to talk to you about teenagers taking on their responsibilities, how they're going to keep on getting more representation monthly, start paying their fees more monthly, and we can get more into the dollar amount and how much you're going to have to pay. But we spread around the tax system enough, and they're not going to be paying but so much. Anyway, please consider a donation to this movement, Haley 2024, the movement. And until the next video.